could maybe mute themselves so we can
Oh.
hear his voice clearly.
So as I said, this is a prayer for Wayne, and it's for God's will, you know, whether it's to heal or to go on to the Abha kingdom. He's ready for both. O God, my God, this is thy radiant servant, thy spiritual thrall, who hath drawn nigh unto thee and approached thy presence. He hath turned his face unto thine, acknowledging thy oneness, confessing thy singleness, and he hath called out in thy name among the nations, and led the people to the streaming waters of thy mercy, O thou most generous Lord. To those who asked, he hath given to drink from the cup of guidance that brimmeth over with the wine of thy measureless grace. O Lord, assist him under all conditions. Cause him to learn thy well-guarded mysteries, and shower down upon him thy hidden pearls. Make of him a banner rippling from castle summits in the winds of thy heavenly aid. Make of him a wellspring of crystal waters. O my forgiving Lord, light up the hearts with the rays of a lamp that sheddeth abroad its beams, disclosing to those among thy people whom thou hast bounteously favored the realities of all things. Verily thou art the mighty, the powerful, the protector, the strong, the beneficent. Verily thou art the Lord of all mercies. Abdul Baha.
Ay, ay, ay. Death is very close to us this time of day, isn't it? Seems stronger this week than any previous week we've been together. Anyway, okay, so maybe our last class is a good one to have under these circumstances as we all reach for that stage ourselves day after day.
Mark, are we still having a discussion next week?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, there's no change there. So that's something that's that I would ask you to start thinking about, even as we're doing this tonight. Come up with comments or questions or insights or whatever thoughts you have to share with people next week. I have no content whatsoever to share. It's just a wide open floor, and we'll just see where we go. Okay, so we left partway through our list of stages. So if you have the summary of the stages of the soul's development to look at, I'll just pull it up. So tonight we're going to start with the inspired soul, which is 4C, this guy right here. So we're still in the world of Nasut, and we will be for several more layers yet. But I promise you we'll get through all of them tonight. Let me just pull up my notes. Okay, so we're starting with the inspired soul. Now, this is one of the ones that is actually mentioned in passing in the Quran. So let me just start at the top of our list again. See who we have here. How about Margaret? You're the first on our list. maybe we could ask you to do the first three, but not right in a row. But just to short.
So, number one,
Yes, please.
by the soul and the one who fashioned it and inspired it as to what makes it iniquitous or reverent. The study
Mhm.
Quran.
Okay. So this and the next verse indicate that God teaches the soul the nature of good and evil. Some commentators link it with the following verse. So that's number 2. Please.
Okay. Did we not make for him 2 eyes, a tongue, and 2 lips, and guide him upon the 2 highways? The study Quran.
So these 2 highways are interpreted by commentators to be those of good and evil, as explained by this particular tradition or hadith. And that's the third one.
Number 3. O people, there are only 2 highways, the highway of good and the highway of evil. Make not the highway of evil more beloved to you than the highway of good. Cited by the study Quran.
Okay. So, however, as you can see, this hardly seems to be describing a stage of the soul. For that, we must rely on Abdu'l-Baha. According to his commentary on the Surah of Rum, the human soul begins to open up to the influence of the sacred texts at this point in its development. The revealed writings urge it to examine the contents of its own book. This is the stage the Quran is indicating when it admonishes people to, quote, read thou thy book, sufficient is it for thy soul as an account against thee on this day, which is Quran 17, verse 14. So this act of self-reflection leads the soul to a wave of new insights. Leslie, do you read 4 for us?
Then there came to it the signs of inspiration, and the reality of day became apparent to it from that of night. And it was summoned to the shore of the ocean of knowledge. Irfan was sustained by holy foods from the gardens of paradise, harvested the fruits of the tree of beneficence, drank from the streams of bounty and grace, benefited from the eternal bounty, and tasted the sweetness of blessings. It came to understand the cause of its elevation and degradation, its ascent and descent, and its rising and setting as it ought to be.
So Abdu'l-Baha's lengthy description of this decisive transition from the blaming soul to the assured soul continues, connecting it to Surah 91, verses 7 and 8. Now, I think David Erickson is our next person online for number 5.
You have to unmute David.
Okay,
There we go. Yep, good.
okay, number 5. It reflected upon its state, its plight became clear to it, and this led it to become averse to those things that perish, and to incline toward those things that endure. It closes its eyes to those things that exist and turns instead to the court of the Almighty, the All-Compelling. It anticipates the call of the concourse on high and turns its attention to those things that will cause it to ascend until it reaches the throne of assurance and the seat of gratitude. It becomes the focal point of inspiration among humanity. It discovers as a result of its efforts and strivings those beneficial things which will lead it to its purpose and goal. Then it is termed the inspired soul, for it is inspired as to that which leads it to deprivation or to righteousness. As he hath said, blessed and glorified be he. By the soul and what is like unto it, he inspired it as to that which leads it to deprivation or to righteousness. in the Quran, 9178, Abdul Baha commentary.
Okay. So that's pretty much all we have at this point available to us on the inspired soul, without going into the commentaries in Islam, in Sufism particularly. So let's turn our attention now to the assured soul, which is described in paragraph 10 in the stages of the soul document that I have extracted from the Surah of Rum, if you're following along. So it's the 10th item there. Okay. The fourth stage of the soul's development is once again clearly presented in the Quran, and this time in more than one surah. So, Belinda, I'm wondering if you could read 6 and 7, just one after the other.
Sorry, I was too quick on the trigger and I
You
muted
turned her off.
David.
Oh, boy.
I'm sorry. There we
There
go.
we go.
Sorry, Belinda.
Okay, that's all right. Bottom of the page. Say, truly God leads astray whomsoever he will, and guides to himself whosoever turns in repentance. Those who believe and whose hearts are at peace in the remembrance of God. Are not hearts at peace in the remembrance of God? The study Quran.
And then if you want to just go ahead and read 7 as well.
Sure. O thou soul at peace, return unto thy Lord, contenting, enter among thy servants, enter my garden. That's the study Quran also.
So the assured soul, or the soul at peace, has conquered the lower self and has attained certainty, according to the study Quran commentary. It now resides in peace in the remembrance of God, returning to God, content and contenting to God. Some commentators speak of the assured soul as being illuminated by the heart, that all blameworthy character traits have been removed from it, while all praiseworthy character traits are now manifest. So you can see we're talking about a fairly high level. I have yet to attain this. Maybe by the end of my life I will, but I doubt it. The way I'm going, it's too slow. So contentment is seen by some Muslim thinkers as one of the most important virtues.
Yeah.
Abul Qasim al-Kushrayri, who died in 1072, for instance, describes it as the greatest gate of God and the paradise of this world. The two terms content and contenting can be read as two different levels of contentment. The first is contentment experienced from God. And the second, the contentment experienced when standing before God. Other commentators emphasize that there can be no contentment with God until God is content with one's soul, as is described in Surah 98, verse 8. Quote, God being content with them and they being content with him. So it's a two-way street. Okay, let's see. Alan Fuller, are you up to reading, do you think? I'll give you a short one.
Thank you. And when Abraham said, my Lord, show me how thou givest life to the dead, he said, dost thou not believe? He said, yea, indeed, but so that my heart may be at peace. And study of the Quran.
So when God asks Abraham, dost thou not believe? This question is understood to be a kind of implicit affirmation of Abraham's faith, as if to say, you believe, so why are you asking? That my heart may be at peace evokes other Quranic references, such as Surah 89, verse 27, where the soul at peace is invited to enter paradise, and 1328, where souls are at peace in the remembrance of God. Here, Muslim commentators grapple with the possibility that Abraham could be out of this state of peace. Some suggest that there are degrees of spiritual knowledge, and that Abraham is speaking of going from one depth of understanding to another, not that he is expressing doubt about God's existence or his power. Since Muslim believers recognize no end to the glories of God, Abraham's question can be seen as an expression of a desire to witness even more of God's self-disclosures. Remember the Tajali that we talked about, if Ibn Arabi? Regarding this verse, one hadith says, quote, "We have more right to doubt than did Abraham." And that's because we're less evolved, right? Abraham's doubt was actually an entreaty for more knowledge, not a hesitation about God's existence. For his part, the Prophet Muhammad is commanded to say, quote, "My Lord, increase me in knowledge." That's in Surah 20, verse 114. This is not meant to highlight the prophet's ignorance, but to point to God's limitlessness and his infinite reality. So with this background in mind, let's see how Abdu'l-Baha elucidates the stage of the assured soul. My goodness. Okay. How about you, Lori? This is a bit of a long one, but if you take it slow, we can get through
Okay.
it.
And in a station which awakens it to the mention of its Lord and arouses it to the call of its Creator from the slumber of vain imaginings, and brings its attention to the remembrance of God, the Almighty, the All-Knowing, to its arising and ascent to the stations of love and assurance, its immersion in the ocean of certitude, its recognition of the signs of God in the dawning places of contingent being, the horizons of existence, and the breaths of the All-Merciful, the appearance of the evidence of the divine oneness from the dayspring of heaven, its entrance into and remaining in the heart of paradise, its simmering in the heat of the love of its Lord, the Almighty, the Beneficent, its pathway and passage to God, the All-Powerful, the ruler of paradise, its setting on the throne of calmness and repose, and its drinking from the chalice of firmness and constancy at all times. Then it is termed the assured soul, because it is assured in its faith. Its turmoil and unrest is calmed. It has quenched its thirst, soothed its torment. It has thinned and removed its veils. It has changed its darkness to light. It has ended its futility. Its shortcomings have turned to perfection. It has pierced its veils, torn its coverings, revealed its secrets, shaken its foundations, and unloaded its burdens. It has reported the tidings that your Lord has revealed to it. Exalted is God, its guide and its savior, the one who illumines it and forms it, above all that the ignorant have said. Abdu'l-Baha, commentary.
Oh, well done. So now you see where Shoghi Effendi got his penchant for long sentences. Jeez. And we could spend all night just on that first sentence, breaking it apart and trying to understand what it's implying for us, but I don't think we're going to do that. But isn't it a gorgeous description of the actual experiences that a person at this stage actually has? And so you can measure yourself against that. How many of these things have you actually experienced or are experiencing? And to what degree do you believe then that you're an assured soul? So you can measure yourself against his description. So then he proceeds to give concrete examples of a soul which embodies contentment. Let me see who we have now. Heather Harvey. Could you read number 10 for us?
And when it has reached this most mighty and perfect station, this most pleasant, most pure, most sweet destination, and has drunk from these clear spring waters of Sabah, it will attain to the station of submission and contentment. It will leave behind its searching and neediness and will entrust its affairs to God, the mighty and eternal King. It will rely upon him and recline against the cushion of his bounty and beneficence. It will not see in this station anything that is inconsistent with its contentment and does not prefer the greatest ease to the most mighty calamity. Indeed, it is content with, accepts whatever God may decree for it. And thou wilt observe it joyful and happy when troubles descend, and grateful and thankful when the oceans of misfortunes and disaster billow forth. Even were the arrows of misfortune and grief to issue forth from the clouds of destiny, and the rains of sorrow and adversity to descend upon it, thou wouldst observe it wetting its tongue with the praise of its Lord, the help in peril, and eloquently expounding in mention of the generous King, Abdu'l-Baha.
So,
Mark.
yes, go
I
ahead.
just, yeah, Bob here. I just think that I'm going to be trying to connect with Wayne later this evening. I don't know if he'll be able to hear me, but I want to read that number 10 to him. I think that'll really move him.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful, beautiful quote for him in this time.
Yeah. The rains of sorrow and adversity. Oh boy, they sure are descending. Oh,
Mark,
yes.
may I say something, please?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
It's interesting when you look back to Christianity in our lovely book here, all four Gospels say that in early Christianity, they became aware that the psyche must be surrendered to God with complete commitment and trust, even to the extent of, so to speak, losing it and thus securing it. And the soul would then be associated with the belief that there will be an embodied resurrection. So we've gone on from there, and this unbelievable description is so much further than that. It outdoes it in many different ways and gives us even greater peace, I think, to look forward to.
Yeah. But it's excellent that you've raised that, because it shows you the kind of solid foundation that the other traditions have provided for us, that we've absorbed to some degree, more or less, depending on the individual. But so in this case, Abdu'l-Baha is building on what's already been laid down as a possibility for humans before this. But he's, as I said last time, he's describing it with details that nobody else has ever done, as far as I'm aware of, which really make it come alive and sharpen our yearning to attain it ourselves, I think.
That's it.
Yeah. So upon reading number 10, it's impossible not to think of the early history of the Babi Baha'i faith and the countless martyrs who met their untimely deaths with such astonishing equanimity, particularly as depicted in the Dawnbreakers. So the next two paragraphs of Abdu'l-Baha's commentary are directly on this.
Mark, I think Alan may have had a comment.
Oh, sure, go ahead, Alan.
Did you, Alan?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
In the second line of 10, it refers to these clear spring waters of Saba.
Yeah.
What does that mean, please?
Aren't you overdoing it? You know, I never ever did this side.
Eva. That's Eva.
Oh, he was answering the
Sorry.
question.
Yeah. Okay, Eva, where are you?
Okay. I don't know the answer to that question, Alan.
I think I'll take a crack at it.
Oh, good. Please do.
Well, Saba is there. They've kept the Persian or Arabic word there. That's Sheba. And the Queen of Sheba, you'll recall from the Bible, who was Solomon and Sheba. Now, she was supposedly very wealthy, and symbolically, the wind that comes from Sheba, and you see this in the Seven Valleys, also is supposed to resemble the springtime. The Sheba is always a positive image of renewal and spring and joy and so on and so forth. These clear waters of Sheba. So, the waters of spring, the breezes of spring, and all of that sort of business.
Mark, can I add something?
You sure
I add?
can.
Yeah.
Please.
Every time I see Saba, I mean, I'm sure someone's written a paper on this, but the Sabaean faith.
Yes.
I don't know how. I also think Saba is like southern Arabia, and which is very close to that part of Africa that later was called Ethiopia. Anyway, so I thought I saw a paper on this somewhere, but I always think of Sabaeans, which is an ancient revelation. Nobody knows how far back it goes.
That's true.
The clear springs, the clear spring waters of Saba, seems to be referring to a part of the world where the Queen of Sheba came from, but also the wisdom that it absorbed from somewhere, probably the Sabaean faith. Anyway, that's one of those mysteries that's going to be cleared up by scholarship, and maybe they'll discover some Dead Sea Scrolls or something to fill out that picture. But I'm always enchanted when I see Saba mentioned. It comes up here and there.
Linda wants to say something.
Yeah. Mark, Belinda?
Are we unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just unmuted.
Okay. There's a location somewhere near Jerusalem called Bathsheba.
Yeah.
And it's a place where there's water. So that would fit in with the imagery that we're referring to. I learned of this from a song dating from World War I, where the Australian cavalry was trying to reach, I guess, Jerusalem. But first they had to get to Bathsheba to get water for their horses.
Interesting.
Take it right down to a very trivial level, but the imagery is still there.
Okay.
Well, one of the meanings is breeze in Arabic. That's what the word means, is breeze.
Okay.
Well, it has several meanings actually, but breeze is one of them. The wind, here it's the waters, but it's also the breeze of Sheba. Very positive image.
Yes, yeah. What did they say in the movie one about in the Arabic word means what it means? It means love.
Okay. Let's just continue on here. So number 11 has to do with the, what am I doing here? I'm sorry.
Oh, Mark, Carol has her hand up.
Oh, does she? Okay,
Yeah.
Carol, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just looking at what was said through Mr. Google, and it says like it kind of correspond with what Harold was saying, an ancient kingdom in southwestern Arabia, known for its trade in gold and spices, the biblical Sheba. So it kind of ties in.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so Carolyn, would you be up for reading number 11?
This is a station which wert thou to attain unto it, thou wouldst arrive at a happiness which would not be followed by sadness, a joy which is not succeeded by grief, an ease and comfort that does not end in distress and hardship, a prosperity that does not turn to destitution and misfortune. For the might of thy Lord has grasped firmly the reins of affairs. The earth is his handful on the day of resurrection, while the heavens will be rolled up in his right hand. Praise be to him, and exalted is he above everything that they ascribe as partner unto him. Quran 39:67. Thus is it that not a leaf stirs upon a tree, nor doth a fruit fall except by the will of thy Lord, the merciful, the compassionate.
Thank you. And maybe Bill can read the last one on this particular level.
For the seeker in this exalted station, there remains no will, no rest, no motion, no destiny, nor any fate except in God. Indeed, his essence, his attributes, his being, his very sense of self, all fade away overwhelmed by the signs of divine oneness, just as the shadows disappear when the pre-existent sun shines forth.
So if we go back to our chart for a second, here we are. We've been talking about the inspired soul and now the assured soul. But if you look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels yet to talk about above it. I mean, from that last description, it would sound as if there's no room at the top above that, but sure enough, Abdu'l-Baha says, no, there is more room. So let's consider that. Despite the exalted nature of the assured soul, Abdu'l-Baha goes on to describe 5 further stages of the soul accessible by human beings. As there are no direct references to these advanced levels in the Quran, we must now focus our full attention on Abdu'l-Baha's own explanations. These will be challenging to comprehend, given our current stages of development. However, exposing ourselves to their lofty nature will no doubt increase our wonder and yearning. Perhaps we should consider turning the Prophet Muhammad's exclamation, "My Lord, increase me in knowledge," into our own rallying cry. Okay, let's go back to the writings. Okay, so Sherry, how about you for number 13?
The prophet is reported to have said, "If a day comes upon me in which I do not increase in a knowledge that draws me nearer to God, may God not bless me that day." Al-Tabrizi.
So, faced with Abdu'l-Baha's staggering vision of humanity's potential for spiritual growth, how are we to respond? I want to come full circle and return to one of the passages from my father's Conversations with a Fish and Others that I shared with you in our first class. I believe it directly relates to humanity's current position. So here is Baha'u'llah's answer as he expressed it to my father in their conversation called Looking for Wealth. And I'm going to exert my authorial position and read this one again. What they, the Baha'is, must do is contact the power, and the power will do the work. All they have to do is follow through. There are so few who understand this. That is why I desperately need you now to communicate to them the real meaning of what I have said, to show them that I do not want followers, but co-workers, who will do as I did, who will contact the power and let it do the work. Of course, I'm not offering you or them a life of leisure. You will have plenty to do, but the power will bring you the opportunities, will create the situations in which you can follow through. The churches have wealth, but they do not have the power, so they can do nothing. Baha'is do not need buildings or wealth because they have the power and it will do everything. You must believe in this power and come back again and again to expose yourself to more of this power. Actually, this is the whole purpose of man, to absorb more and more of this power, to expand his capacity to the fullest. Of course, there is a limit to which the human body can absorb the power, but after death, the soul will be able to absorb more and more infinitely. And with that, why don't we take our quick little break and start up our next section.